February monthly budget performance report. Met with the budget committee, as we always do each month, and we're challenged to resolve some of the outstanding issues with the negative balances that we have in some of the accounts. Met with our Board of Ed accountant this morning and set a deadline of April 3rd to have all the reclassifications done for anybody in accounts that are being paid, any individuals are being paid out of the wrong accounts. So that will be delivered by April 3rd. Continue to move forward toward the end of the year. It's very critical that we understand completely each and every account, make sure that the people who have been assigned to different departments are actually being paid out of those line items. Also, there are going to be requests to the board to do some transfers between accounts. So those are being put together now. I'd like to try to do them en masse so that it's not going to be a constant interference in the rest of the work that we have to do. But the reclassification obviously is the first step. So after April 3rd, we'll be able to do the line transfers and balance these accounts out, so we'll have a very accurate end-of-year projection. I'm not sure if anybody has any particular questions. I know the Director of Student Services is going to be speaking a little bit to some of the balances potentially on the special education budget that has, in years past here in Torrington, has been a challenge. And some of the bigger numbers are attributable to special education. So I don't know if you have any questions. Yes?
I've been on the board for, this is my 8th year, and I've never heard this concept come up, reclassification of accounts.
Oh, Andrew, just for, this was really generated by budget. In the past, people were, wherever they started the year is where they stayed, regardless of where they were budgeted. We wanted to see a budget where people were actually paid out of where they were budgeted for and any grant offsets. The way it was running before, they were in the general budget, but possibly being paid out of a grant at Forbes. So they're reclassifying to put people in the buildings that they belong or budgeted for, not just in a lot, district-wide. So it's more to get some more transparency of, one, the way we were operating, you couldn't actually tell how many staff was in Forbes based on the budget. It should be very clear that there's 20 teachers at Forbes, this is the salary for the 20 teachers, this is what's paid by grant. So we've asked them to reclassify people to put them in the departments that they actually belong in and are being paid out of.
But who and how did this light go off that all of a sudden?
It's not all of a sudden, it's been discussed at every budget since I've been on the board.
You've been discussing this for several years now, that we don't know where people are in the budget process?
It's truing people up, not necessarily that you don't know where they are, but if someone in the budget, say, is budgeted out of East, but then they get moved to Forbes,
right,
that money should follow that teacher to Forbes, but it was staying at the site that they were originally budgeted at.
And you knew this?
We could tell this during our budget deliberation.
And every time this came up, you as the budget chair said what?
Well, I'm only the budget chair this year, but what happened in the past
that's why I'm asking
is
why,
they would,
what was happening over the 8 years? This has never been a discussion item that I've ever heard in 8
right.
years.
Well, what was happening last year is they were making the changes, giving new sheets, but we're trying to get it to a point where it's an automatic process. That during budget, we're not reclassifying people.
So, and if I could just interject something, one of the things, when I started here, one of the first meetings I had, actually with the budget committee, and was a discussion on what happened last year, and kind of a motivation for me to try to understand how the people were allocated to grants and how they're allocated to the general fund, and the confusion that ensued during the budget season when you'll be doing it, so you'll be looking at the salary accounts and saying, okay, well, at this school, just for instance, since we were talking about special education before, say you have voices, and you have 4 people that are at the school being paid out of voices. Well, in actuality, you have 6 people that paraprofessionals say that are in this. I'm just making these numbers up. 6 paraprofessionals being paid out of that account, but 2 of them are being paid from entitlements. 4 of them are in the general fund. So this year, and I said the last time we were talking about this, in New World, you were able to identify resources in there, 4 of which were paid from the general fund, 2 of which are paid from grants or entitlements, whatever you want to call them. So that you also have a non-certified salary schedule, so you'll be able to see on there, there's 4 people being paid for the voice program out of there, 2 people in that school being paid out of grants. So it's not going to be, hopefully, not going to be confusing this year when you're discussing staffing. You can say, okay, well, you know, out of the grants, we're paying this much for this program. Out of the general fund, we're paying this much. If we need to save money out of the grants, one of these people can go away. Or conversely, you could take one from the general fund and get rid of them, and you'll be able to keep a running balance. That's why, you know, you guys asked us to do this. So that's the history that I know. Oh, sorry, lost my train of thought there. So that's the approach to get this true up, so that you know exactly what's in, what's been paid out for those, each of those line items through the end of the year. And it's really a true up for next year, because, you know, we've forecasted after spending a lot of time with the assistant superintendent, and director of student services, put a forecast together for next year with the new salary schedule, you know, based on where the people are on their pay scales. So that's the, I don't know what you want to call it, the checks and balances. You need to know exactly where you're at the end of the year, and you need to know that your projections for the following year for those programs is accurate.
Sir, I was reading through our bylaws, I believe, just today, and I believe that I came across this section that stated that in August of each year, the superintendent is to file with the Board of Finance a final accounting.
Yeah.
Is that true?
The EDO 1 is filed with the state.
Okay. And
No, with the state government. It's audited by the city's auditors.
And how, over the years, was this not picked up, this lack of classification of where?
Well, because a certified salary is a certified salary. But from the board's perspective, we're looking at it as how much is East School costing us to run? How much is Torringford? They're not looking at it in that manner. They're saying Torrington Public Schools has X amount of certified salaries, X amount of non-cert.
Right. They have you do an aggregate cost analysis now for the state. Because ultimately, like with the uniform, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but the uniform chart of accounts, ultimately where they're going with that, the state, they want to know what it's costing you, you know, the municipalities to run their schools. So the approach that the board has taken this year, and these programs in particular, is to enable us to get a snapshot. And your point the other day was not lost on me. You want to know ultimately what it costs, and I don't want to go on the discussion of snow plowing again. But to your point, you want to know what it costs to take care of a school, and that would ultimately, if you could get that granular with the snow plowing, that would be a wonderful thing. But the way the Uniform Chart of Accounts is set up and the way our accounting is set up now is such that you can take a program out, because we're using New World, you can take a program, voices out, pull it out of one school and put it in another school, because the same accounting accounts that are in one school are reflected in another school. So at the end of the year, what you want to know is, and the state wants to know is, what's it cost Torrington to run their middle school? And then what does it cost another township that has a similar size school, number of children, demographics to run their school? Why is Torrington running their school so much more efficiently? Because they got a great board. But, you know, they want to be able to do that analysis.
And that would go to the issue that I raise every year, which is why we're so underfunded by the state. Because I think that that formula, if someone actually knew the details of that formula, I think plugging in the facts of this municipality and this school district, I think we would be entitled to more money.
Well,
I don't know enough about the formula. I'm positive it's very sophisticated, but it's probably something that,
you know, Andrew, anytime you want to stop by the Minden Avenue, I'm serious.
Right.
We'll go on the state website and I'll show you the same things that the mayor and her people look at. It's right out there for you, and what I'll do is we start discussing these things. I don't know if it's been done before, but I'm going to take screenshots of all your grants and show you where you're at, how much money you've gotten. And, you know, ultimately, if there is a way to get more money for the district, I'll do it. I don't know of it, but I'd certainly be willing to move heaven and earth to get this town more money. But I don't know that there's any more. In fact, with all the, you know, unfunded mandates out there for the city, you're hard pressed to continue to support education as it is. So they're not, the state's not making it any easier for you. They're making it harder, more challenging, and that's the reality of it.
And they're going to continue to offer what they call competitive grants to school districts that are not in the Alliance District or, you know, the other districts already recognized to be poor performing. And so that's to get extra money for Torrington. That's what we've done, is we've gone after these competitive grants.
and I just wonder if it's counterproductive at some point for the leadership of the city and the board to always try to put on a good face as far as how good everything is running and how good things are in this city, as opposed to having a more darker image and a more truthful image of just where this community is going in the last several years. And it's hard, I understand that when you pay people who are leaders to do the best job they can, there's facts that are outside of the control of the leadership of a community that just have to, that picture just has to be painted to the people who are allocating the money. That Torrington, even though the leadership does a very good job of managing this community, it's going in the wrong direction. And how do you get that pitch? Who's going to pitch that negative scenario?
And I think Torrington's got great potential.
Well, that's not the,
I do.
yeah, I understand, we like to think we have great potential, just the fact is, the reality is that the community, the statistics, whatever data you want to look at, from the grand list to our social economic data that is published, that you see in the arbitration hearings and things of that nature, just show a community that is social economically in severe decline. And I'm saying, it's hard for people such as yourself or a mayor to go out to those basically beg for more money, because this is how bad things are under a community in which you're overseeing. It just would make sense. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate everything you're saying, and I'm the first one to step up and say, we are a distressed municipality. That's a state identification. It's based on income levels, it's based on poverty levels, it's based on housing market prices. You know, there's a formula that the state uses to identify us as a distressed municipality. You touched on our grand list. As you saw, our grand list was reduced by almost 19%. The impact of that reduction on our grand list is that the mill rate is going up, and it's going up significantly. And those are very scary statistics for me to have to stand out in front of the public, in front of the taxpayers, and say, this is what your new mill rate is. You know, you're absolutely right. There has to be more noise made, that the city is not in a position to continue to afford the very expensive services that are required to run a city. I'm not just talking about education, which is very expensive, and especially as it relates to special education, but even our police and fire services. So you're absolutely right, and it is about making enough noise and beating the same drum over and over again. We are also competing with every other distressed municipality in the state as well.
Right.
Student services.
Charter of accounts.
Well, I touched on it a little bit. Uniform Chart of Accounts was another initiative. I think it was January 2013. The state reached out to municipalities, and also they pulled the schools into the loop, or the Board of Education into the loop, and said that they wanted to come up with a uniform way of measuring it. I wrote it down here. Measuring and identifying the costs of running the schools, like I said before. Office of Policy Management selected Blum Shapiro, which happens to be the auditor that you guys use, which is a wonderful thing. And I actually, when I got the letter, I called over and spoke to the comptroller, Alice, got her on speed dial. I asked her about it, and what she said to me, and I have printout handouts for you guys, and you can read them. I don't believe these question and answers were in the board packet. I apologize for that, just the letter is. But what they said was that there were like 11 school districts that volunteered to participate in this fact-finding. They had some difficulties, but they have some workarounds. I think Alice called it a crosswalk. And I know you guys know about accounting. So they think that it's going to be possible for us to lay our data down. And you'll see I printed out samples of, you know, this Torrington's, or I guess it's just a sample, municipalities' chart of accounts and our chart of accounts. But they're also providing a web-based, menu-driven system, I guess, so that you could input your chart of account information or your ledger information in the short term. But the deadline for doing this is the end of this fiscal year, the end of June 2015. So we have budgeted some money to do this. I don't think it's going to require consulting dollars. I'm assuming that Alice, you know, she's been kind of in the vanguard of doing this, so we'll follow her lead and work with her. And Tina, our accountant, has, you know, worked with Alice and Gina over at the city, so probably going to be a lot of work, but, you know, we'll get it done.
It's also a way that the state can take a look at, I mean, they do it now with all the information on all students, and they can pull it up, and then they can see like what it's costing to run Torrington Public Schools, given basically the needs of the students and the programs offered.
Is the new system compatible with New World?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. there's a whole mapping that they're going to do, so that everything can be exported from the current system and put into a system that will filter all of those line items where they need them to.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, having successfully completed the high-level maps for the majority of municipalities, we have engaged Bloom Shapiro for the next stage of mapping the municipal financial information at a lower and more detailed level. And then for the municipalities whose financial accounting systems are not capable of providing electronically the financial information that will be requested, Bloom Shapiro's developed the data entry forms to capture the information the firm will be seeking. This is dated March 9th, and they're looking to turn this around by June 2015, so it's bearing down on us. So.
Any questions on that? Student services presentation. Thank you.
You good there?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. How are you? So today I'm going to just do a summary of where we are at special education and the expenses that we have, as well as the revenues. And I will also look a little bit at school choice as well as paraprofessionals. Okay. So what's being handed out, we have two handouts this evening. The first one is an updated busing costs sheet. And the second is I had been asked to report on the students that are attending magnet and regional schools. And so, and by grade as well, okay. And the third piece of information would be paras, but I have to speak to that in terms of some updates that have to be done. So if you see that the first handout with the print with all of the numbers on it, I think that you're becoming really familiar with these printouts now. In terms of, that's the busing. And I did present this last week at the subcommittee, and some questions did come up. This is information I presented last week, and one of the questions that came up is, you know, from month to month, there is sometimes a fluctuation of perhaps 10, even, you know, $20,000, let's say, in some, and then also line item to line item, perhaps $1,000 or $2,000 or in that vicinity. So I looked, I spoke with Ms. Murphy, who works on our transportation and is intimately involved with it on a daily basis. And in reviewing this, what we found is that on a daily basis almost, students could be leaving the district, coming into the district. The requirements for busing can change literally, you know, from one day to the next. For instance, one day we had 2 students leave CJR and another student enter CJR with different needs for busing. Okay, so that's those fluctuations. But I think that it's important that, and I'm glad that you're asking what that means, you know, every time we meet. So from next month on, okay, there'll be a notation at each line item indicating if there's a real difference as to why it is that the projection is different to, you know, what's actually happening sort of in real time. So that this way, you know, it'll be right there in front of you. You'll see, okay, a student left or a student, you know, entered, or, you know, perhaps there was a different, you know, student that came in through DCF, or there was a placement, that kind of thing. So we'll be doing that so that it makes it a little bit, you know, more user-friendly for you, because I know lots of times you end up sort of taking these things home too and then looking at them and then, oh, I didn't ask her this or I didn't ask her that. And sometimes I may not have the answer to begin with, so I think it'll give us both kind of that ability to kind of look at it that way. So hopefully that's okay, and you'll be good with that. But some of the reasons are cost sharing could increase, cost sharing could decrease. You know, sometimes we share the costs of a van or a vehicle with, you know, a neighboring town or a municipality, and then all of a sudden that student is no longer attending. Therefore now we're responsible for the full amount of the busing. So it's things like that that happen. So so that's just a, you know, a little summary of what has been going on. But currently, okay, for as of 3/12 for busing, we do have a budgeted amount of $983,358. I need to just let you know that for the past, I guess, maybe 5 months that I've been presenting, it's been $894,560. You'll see it says out of district transportation. But what has happened through the process that Mr. Potter has described to you earlier is that, you know, the way that we're budgeting things is a little bit different this year. I wasn't familiar with the way it was budgeted last year, but this year we're going to be delineating out the summer costs as well. So now you'll see those two items and then a total. So if you notice that that total that was budgeted is different, that's the reason for that, because now we're including the summer. Because the majority, if 99.9% of the students actually that are outplaced do go year-round. And so our summer is billed differently, so we're including it there so that you could see both. And down below, you see what, again, what our beginning balance was, or our budgeted amount, what paid to date and projected costs, so to the end of the year. And that would not include this coming summer because this is the fiscal year that ends, you know, June 30th, is $1,337,701. And we're looking at a projected shortage of $354,343. However, at our last meeting, we were talking about excess costs. We were talking about acquiring those costs and things and the steps that we have to take to make sure that, you know, that piece is applied. And I don't know if you have to talk about that or.
Yeah, we can. Again, Beth Murphy does a very good job of tracking this, and I'm very grateful that she has been on top of it, because we talked a little bit about excess costs the last time, and ultimately, I know we have to go before the Finance Committee at some point if we've exceeded what was budgeted. And in order to know whether you exceeded, you know, any to a penny what was budgeted, you have a capped entitlement. Beth and I actually talked to Mr. Chambers at the state the other day, because no money has been sent from the state yet. It usually hits in May. So now you got, you know, we were talking about revenue. We were talking about knowing exactly how much we've exceeded what was budgeted, and it has to be the number that was budgeted in that revenue sheet. And that's why I was loath to put a number in there. But, you know, in truth, I need to put something out there for you guys to look at. So at the end of the year, you got to find out how much we exceeded and why. Because we're going to be going in front of the Finance Committee. They're going to want to know, you know, what's the story, Sam? And then ultimately, if we have exceeded what was projected, we have to request that that money be made available to pay that extra cost. So that's why this is going to be very useful for next year and following years, because you're going to have a snapshot of where you're at, and you're not going to, at the last minute, be trying to figure out, you know. I'm not saying that happened in the past, but.
Okay.
The Medicaid account, we identified last year when the board came before the Board of Finance, we identified there was roughly $400,000 in your Medicaid account. You ended the year without having to tap that funds. As I understand it, there's considerably more money in that account right now. And I'm wondering why you're not hitting that Medicaid account up to cover some of this deficit.
That was gonna be actually, because I was doing the good news of it, so it's the excess cost and then also the Medicaid piece, which is, I think, in the vicinity of now 500, 548.
Okay, yeah,
That's close to
it's up there.
So those are, that's the good news that I have to share, which is really great. We have those funds that we can, you know, use. I'm not 100% familiar with how
Well, you
that
have to-
works, but,
You gotta carry over enough to carry, because one of the, Beth, the lady who works for the vet, special services, her salary's paid out of that account. And also, I don't know if on tip of my hand, but, I mean, you've budgeted to get IEP Direct and IEP Medicaid software to replace the C's software that you use.
yes.
The C's software, I know it's not budget night, but the C's software is very laborious, doesn't allow the level of detailed reporting by the people that you're paying out in the field to provide the services that we're paying them to do. In essence, by them not being able to report adequately, we're potentially losing out on revenue that we could get back from the state in the form of Medicaid dollars. So I don't have any skin in the game, it's your money, but I think that IEP Direct and IEP Medicaid module, as it was explained to me, will allow you to do very detailed reporting and get that money back from the state, and that would make you happy over there.
And they synchronize really well. They work very well together, those two systems.
And what are we allowed to use the Medicaid dollars for?
You could purchase that, you can use it for salary, anything special ed related. But to the mayor's point, that money, you don't, it's not it's available and needs to be used to, you know, reduce the deficit, but also you gotta leave a little cushion in there for a couple of things, I think, but.
That's true.
It's my recollection that last year, when the board was looking for the cuts that were directed from the Board of Finance, that Medicaid account was taken into consideration as a source to cover some of these expenses, or some of the expenses were going to be moved into that account. So it's clear to me when I look at these, you know, these numbers, that none of these expenses had been moved into that account. Hence the $600,000 or close to $600,000 balance in there.
Right, and potentially, there's gonna be conservatively 140,000 more by the end of the year. So, based on Beth's projections. So, yep, there's money there, the board's gotta, you know, discuss how they're gonna use it, and, you know, with the proviso that you leave a little cushion in there.
And IEP Direct is a software system? Or?
Yes, it is. It's a software system. It's web-based, and that's where all the teachers actually, you know, can write their goals and objectives. The IEP is done on that software system, and it really assists us in creating reports that are very meaningful for you know, meetings such as these, or data collection, especially for the state, which is a huge responsibility that we have. But it will really facilitate that process.
And too, with the excess costs, I think it's for any student that we pay 4.5 times over
The average cost of a student,
of a
yes.
student.
Mhm.
And so we do quarterly reports into the state,
Yes, that's correct.
and so that they're aware of how much we are spending over for students. But then that excess cost, any money that we get back goes right to the city. And it's supposed to, you know, if we,
Well, it doesn't go back to the city. Certainly if there are expenses that we can use to offset that revenue. If your expenses are above and beyond what you budgeted, and your revenue that you're getting in is directly related to that, it can be adjusted. We can adjust your expenses up and adjust your revenue
for special.
Right.
ed.
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's why, you know, they wanna see exactly what you're doing,
Yeah.
what every cent was spent on, all the revenue we're getting from the state, and know that exactly. And then look at how we're using that Medicaid money, and then at the end of the day, if we can make the, you know, we will make the case that if we exceeded it by this because of things that were not within your control, you know, DCF bringing kids in, or, you know, kids having to go out for special services, then you don't, I go, give us some money.
And And the other piece with getting the IEP Direct and Medicaid Direct is that students who are serviced outside of the district, the people who are providing the service to these children can also then go into the Medicaid Direct and record their time and services, and will get reimbursed then for those students, which we're paying for their services, but we're not getting their Medicaid reimbursement.
And it's so fluid. I got a bill the other day for $50-something thousand for a child. We're the Nexus. The child lived here, but he was sent by DCF to Danbury. So we had to provide transportation to Danbury, and they were billing us for a boatload of money. And I showed it to Beth, and Beth was like, no. That, we do have to pay some, but it's not $50,000. She was able to, tell me to the penny. But that's scary, just like that. There's $50,000, or potentially.
Right,
$50,000.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, can you just go across and tell us what the headers are to each of these columns?
Yeah, that would be
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So the placement is where, what the location, the school, okay? And paid to date, August to February, is, what we have actually paid.
Actually,
Okay.
can you just to break it down simple, so column 1 is location.
Oh,
What
sure.
would
Oh, sure.
column 2 be?
Column, do you not have the headers at all?
We don't have any
No.
headers.
Oh. Mine has headers. Okay, I'm sorry. Column 1 is the placement, where the student, is attending. Column 2 is paid to date.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I thought you wanted me to explain though. Okay, because mine has, okay. Column 3 is remaining days. So how many days are, remaining? Column 4
I think that's the price per day.
is the daily rate, yes. Okay, column 5, costs projected, so the projection for the year. The next column, column 6, is the number on the run, how many students. The next column is the placement, so essentially how did this child, get to be where they are. It could be DCF, LEA is us, team is Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, so that's that column. And then the total. The final column is the total. Okay. So what I'll do, because it is in mini print, I will make sure that you get a bigger one, okay?
I mean, we've seen this so many times.
I know.
Budget, but
But other
looking
folks
at
have
it
not.
might not know what any of this.
Okay. Okay. The other piece is the tuition piece, and that is something that we do have an update, but I wanted to really take a fine-tooth comb look at it. So I just can say that, based on my report from last week, and then to the full board the previous month, the changes, I need to just sort of collect the changes. We've been working on the actual, the budget for next year, and so I will have that to you the next time that we meet. And actually, I think it'd be fine if I just email it to, could we email it, the updated one? Okay. Because one of the things is that I had been asked to put in what we actually budgeted, and that is in all different places because we weren't using the New World necessarily, and it was all in different places. So I really want to make sure that before I give that to you, I capture truly what was budgeted and give that to you. The next handout. Oh, yes.
Are we on Torrington Public Schools, regular education, attending magnet and reading
Yes,
school?
that's the next right now.
Okay, we're gonna do that.
Yes, we're gonna do that. Okay, so this is what we have as of, today, basically, we checked, and this is what we have of today, to give you a sense of the students, we'd been asked about the students, the regular education students, because usually what happens is we report out, special education students, but our regular education students that are attending the magnet schools and the regional schools are here. We have not, we're looking for a report from Oliver Wolcott. We still haven't gotten that back yet, so this is not fully complete, but I wanted to give you something so you can look at. This was asked of me last week, so I wanted to make sure you had something. And then I know that you have to present to the,
We wanted to give it to the city council.
right, so yeah, and the call went out last week, so I'm hoping that, we get that information back. But this is what we have right now. It's broken down by school, so Wamoko Region 7, and then the CREC magnet schools. And there are various magnet schools, in the CREC magnet schools. 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So you could see the total number of students for each grade at each school that is currently attending. And then the total amount of tuition that we pay, the district, is responsible for. And the other piece to this is transportation, but again, I wanted to make sure that I captured everything, so that will be an update. But if we're looking at tuition, and we're looking at, based on these schools, currently there are 128 students that are regular education out of district, and let's not forget that that's Oliver Wolcott is going to be added to this. And then in terms of tuition, it's $725,433. And I know that one of the important pieces is not just the amount of students, but are they elementary, middle, and high? And so you can see that we have no 4th and 5th graders in the CREC schools right now. And you can see the numbers and what they look like. Okay, I know every month we sort of talk about this, but I think this is a good thing to see this. So if this is a report that you would like to have, maybe not every month, because it likely wouldn't change every month, but maybe every quarter or what have you. So you can let me know how you like that. Okay.
This is the one, if I remember correctly, when we were looking at this during budget the other night. This is the tuition amount that I think we saw was like 1.127 total that was projected, right?
Right, but that's special education. So this is only regular education students, because what I give to you folks.
So what's the projection for this? Because this is,
this
if I'm
is,
reading it right, it's as of 3/10.
Oh, no, as of 3/10, no, this is the tuition. This is what it is. For the
So
year.
this isn't really as of 3/10, this is for the year.
It's well, it depends, because sometimes students might come back. As of 3/10 is the amount of students.
Okay.
So just to clarify that.
So we're saying, like, hypothetically speaking, if nobody comes or goes,
Right,
725,433 is what it is.
right.
Plus Wolcott.
Plus Wolcott.
Plus, okay.
Yes,
There's
so-
no tuition for Wolcott.
But there's
Just
the transportation piece, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And
So
there's
make sure
about-
got the right numbers in my
Provide
head.
transportation for all of the Wolcott Tech students anyways,
Yeah, that's what I just said, yeah.
but every student, it's not, okay.
No,
No,
the students
just
come from other
Torrington.
towns. We just provide
Just
for
Torrington.
Torrington.
The only reason I was asking is I know there was a question when we were trying to align our calendars, making sure that their days off are the same as our days off for the busing reasons.
Now, do we provide transportation to the magnet schools?
No, we do not.
No.
And we don't provide transportation to Region 7 for regular ed?
No, we do not.
We only provide Wamoko because they agreed to reduce.
Right.
But not tuition. Is this,
Can we get what the transportation cost is for Wamoko for future?
Sure.
sure, yeah, yep.
And what, if we added Oliver Wolcott here, we wouldn't have tuition, but we
Right.
would have the transportation costs. There are 300 students there.
And what I'll do is I'll expand this out to include that, and then so that there's no guessing, if, we don't pay tuition, but we should pay transportation, I'll make sure that that's noted there, so that, so that you're not guessing.
And that's 300 students from Torrington that
Yeah.
go all over Wolcott?
Yes.
they're bused separately, they're not on the,
No, they're on our buses.
so how would you break out those busing costs if they're on our buses?
Just for probably the days that we don't, when we still have different days for professional development.
Each bus holds
70.
Yeah, 77, 30, type 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we do have, we know we have like 4 or 5
Buses would
buses
still
that
have to
go
run
to.
though. It's not, if those kids are on
Correct,
bus, we'd
but we
still
could,
have them.
Right.
correct, but we could reduce by 4 buses if we didn't
Right.
have to bus
Yeah.
them.
But it's mandated that we
Yeah.
pass them?
Yeah.
What we're trying
Yeah.
to get our head around is, what are the mandated costs? What are flexible costs? Just to get a true handle on where our money's going.
And All-Star has been, I gotta say, very flexible in working with us to, if they can get kids on a bus, and if we don't have to run a bus, we don't, but right now, what's budgeted for next year is, the reality, so.
The other piece too is.
And Bristol Tech.
Right, Bristol Tech, that's,
Do we bus to Bristol Tech?
yes.
Yes. And no tuition. How many students do we now go to Bristol Tech?
Oh, it's only junior and seniors.
I get that because of the logo.
Oh, yeah.
So there's tuition also?
Oops.
No.
No tuition.
No, that's a Bristol, that's a
Only
Bristol Tech.
transportation.
Yeah. That's another